The subtle art of saying no without feeling guilty. You know, I think one of the hardest words to say sometimes is just 2 letters. No. That's it. No. Such a small word, but somehow, for some of us, saying it feels like we're starting a war. We overthink it. We rehearse it. We find 10 different ways to soften it. I'm sorry, but maybe. I wish I could, but let me see if I can. And sometimes we don't even want to say no. We want to say no. We know we should say no. But we are so afraid of disappointing someone that we say yes anyway. And then we spend the next few hours or days being angry. Not at them, at ourselves. Because we knew we didn't want to do it. We just didn't know how to say no. I think many of us were taught directly or indirectly that being a good person means being available. Be helpful. Be understanding. Be accommodating. Don't make people uncomfortable. Don't be difficult. Don't disappoint people. Don't hurt anyone's feelings. And somewhere along the way, we started believing that having boundaries made us selfish. That saying no meant we didn't care. That choosing ourselves meant we were becoming cold. But what if it's not true? What if saying no isn't a reaction of other people? What if sometimes it's an acceptance of yourself? Think about how often you say yes when you actually mean no. Someone asked you for a favor. You don't have the time. You don't have the energy. Maybe you don't even want to do it. But you hear yourself saying, "Sure, I'll do it." Someone wants you to go somewhere. You don't want to go. You're tired. You need to rest. But instead of saying that, you start creating excuses. I'll let you know. Maybe. We'll see. Because saying no directly feels too uncomfortable. And then there's the guilt. What if they think I'm rude? What if they get upset? What if they stop talking to me? What if they think I don't care? And suddenly, someone else's possible reaction becomes more important than your actual needs. That's where things become dangerous. Because if you're constantly making decisions based on how other people might feel, you eventually stop asking yourself how you feel. And I don't think boundaries are about becoming a person who never helps anyone. That's not what I'm talking about. There will always be moments when we inconvenience ourselves for people we love. That's part of being human. Sometimes you help when you're tired. Sometimes you show up when it's difficult. Sometimes you make sacrifices because someone matters to you. That's not weakness. That's love. The problem begins when sacrifice becomes your default setting. When everyone knows they can call you and you'll come running. When people know you'll forgive everything. When they know you'll rearrange your entire life to accommodate them. When they know that even if you're exhausted, you'll still say yes. At that point, you're not simply being kind. You're teaching people that your boundaries don't matter. And eventually, they may not be the only ones ignoring them. You might start ignoring them too. I think that's one of the quiet consequences of always saying yes. You begin to resent the people you've agreed to help. And that's such a strange feeling. Because technically, they didn't force you. You said yes. But you didn't really mean it. You said yes because you were afraid of what would happen if you said no. And now, you are angry at someone for accepting an answer that you gave them. That's why honest boundaries are actually kinder. If you don't want to do something, say no. If you can help, say you can't. If you're uncomfortable, say you're uncomfortable. Because a genuine yes is much more valuable than a resentful one. And I know that you're probably thinking, okay, but how do I actually say no? Because knowing that you need boundaries is one thing. Actually setting them is another. Especially if you're someone who has spent years trying to keep everybody happy. So maybe we start small. You don't need some dramatic speech. You don't need to explain your entire life story. You don't need to give someone 17 reasons why you can't do something. Sometimes, no, I can't is enough. Sometimes, unfortunately, I won't be able to is enough. Sometimes, that doesn't work for me is enough. And that's it. You don't have to feel the silence afterwards. You don't have to immediately apologize for existing. You don't have to make your no sound like a yes. I think that's where the real art of saying no comes in. Learning to tolerate the discomfort that follows. Because sometimes the person will be disappointed. Sometimes they'll ask why. Sometimes they won't understand. And sometimes they might even call you selfish. That's difficult. Especially when you're used to being the person who always says yes. But someone being disappointed by your boundary doesn't automatically mean your boundary is wrong. Read that again in your head. Someone being disappointed by your boundary doesn't automatically mean your boundary is wrong. People can be disappointed. People can disagree with you. People can be uncomfortable. And you can still be okay. I think we sometimes forget that other people's emotions are not always ours to manage. You can care about someone's feelings without taking responsibility for every feeling they experience. That's a huge difference. If I say no to you and you're disappointed, I can understand that. I can care that you're disappointed. But I don't necessarily have to change my decision simply because you're disappointed. Because if I do, then my boundaries aren't really my boundaries. They're negotiations. And every time someone pushes hard enough, they disappear. There's also something else I want us to talk about. The fear of being perceived differently. Because sometimes we don't fear saying no itself. We fear becoming the person who says no. Maybe you've built an identity around being helpful. You're the reliable one, the understanding one, the one everyone calls when something goes wrong, the one who always lends money, the one who always listens, the one who always gives another chance. So when you suddenly start saying no, people notice. And sometimes they don't like it. But here's the uncomfortable truth. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries may not celebrate when you finally create some. And that's okay. Because your boundary isn't supposed to make everyone comfortable. It's supposed to make your life healthier. And I think this applies to relationships too. Sometimes we stay in conversations we don't want to have. We answer messages we don't want to answer. We keep entertaining people we are no longer interested in. We agree to things because we're scared of being called rude. We give people access to us simply because they want it. But access to you is not something everyone is automatically entitled to. You are allowed to decide who gets your time, who gets your energy, who gets your attention, who gets to know you, and who doesn't. That isn't arrogance. That's discernment. And maybe you've been saying yes for so long that you don't even know what your own no sounds like anymore. Maybe you've forgotten that you can change your mind. Maybe you think that because you agreed yesterday, you have to agree forever. You don't. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to realize that something isn't good for you anymore. You are allowed to outgrow commitments. You are allowed to step away. You are allowed to say, I thought I could do this, but I can't anymore. You don't have to remain loyal to a version of yourself who made a decision before they knew what they know now. I think growing up teaches us something very uncomfortable. Not everyone is going to understand us. Not everyone is going to like our choices. Not everyone is going to agree with our boundaries. And that's okay. Because the goal isn't to live a life where nobody is disappointed in you. That's impossible. The goal is to live a life where you aren't constantly disappointing yourself just to keep everyone else happy. And maybe that's the real difference between people-pleasing and kindness. Kindness comes from a place of choice. People-pleasing often comes from fear. Kindness says, I want to help you. People-pleasing says, I'm afraid of what will happen if I don't. Those might look identical from the outside, but they feel completely different on the inside. So the next time someone asks you for something and your instinct is to immediately say yes, pause. Just pause. You don't have to answer immediately. You can say, let me think about it. Give yourself time. Ask yourself, do I actually want to do this? Do I have the capacity for this? Am I saying yes because I genuinely want to, or because I'm afraid of saying no? And if the answer is no, then maybe let your answer be no. Not an angry no, not a cruel no, not a dramatic no. Just no. A quiet one, a respectful one, a complete one. Because you don't have to become hard to have boundaries, right? You don't have to stop caring. You don't have to become selfish. You don't have to explain yourself to exhaustion. You can still be kind. You can still love people. You can still show up for people. And you can still say no. Those things can exist together. And if saying no makes you feel guilty at first, that's okay. Maybe the guilt isn't proof that you've done something wrong. Maybe it's simply the feeling of doing something you're not used to doing. Maybe you're not becoming selfish. Maybe you're becoming honest. And maybe, for the first time, you're learning that your needs deserve a place in the room too. So, if you are someone who has spent years saying yes when every part of you wanted to say no, I hope you start small. Protect one evening. Decline one invitation. Set one boundary. Don't answer immediately. Give yourself permission to think. And remember, you don't owe everyone unlimited access to you. Your time matters. Your energy matters. Your peace matters. And you matter. Thank you for spending these few minutes with me. And if you're someone who's learning how to choose yourself without feeling guilty about it, just know you're not alone. We're all figuring this out. One boundary, one uncomfortable conversation, one honest no at a time. This is the calm spiral, where quiet struggles find a voice. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next spiral.